All right, here we go. Welcome, everyone. Today I'm excited to introduce Mike Pocisk, who is joining us from down in Greenville, South Carolina. Mike, welcome.
Thank you, Michael.
Yes, sir. Very glad to have you here. And for our topic today, we're diving into a really interesting niche within real estate, short-term rental investing. And Mike's built a business specifically around helping investors find high-performing properties. So with that being said, Mike, why don't you start out, walk us through your journey? How did you begin in real estate and what eventually led you to this niche?
Yeah, no, thanks, Michael. Thanks for having me. So I've been a realtor now for going on about 10 years. Lived in Charlotte for a while. Before being a realtor, I was in mortgage servicing, handled a lot of default operations. So sort of part of real estate in that situation where I had areas within some regional banks that did foreclosures, collections, those types of things. Had our own book of business, REOs. So I decided to get into real estate since I was already sort of in that world about 8 years ago. Got my license in both North and South Carolina. And around that time is when I got my first short-term rental. It was in that area in 2012 when, obviously markets were depressed a little bit. So I decided to get my own then, and it's been a journey, a lot of trial and error, learning from that, and eventually got my second one about 5 years ago. But around that time, maybe in between about 8 years ago, I started feeling a calling to try a little bit different than just spec home. People moving to Charlotte, finding out home. I wanted to become more of an investment for folks. So I leveraged the area I was in, mostly around the North Carolina mountains, Asheville, Boone, High Country, great places to come visit. And I said, okay, well, let's see if I can help these folks find profitable short-term rentals. So I started that about 6 years ago, and about 2 years ago, I joined Savvy Realty, where it's pretty much all we do now, Michael, is help people find, as you said, profitable short-term rentals in all over the U.S. So we have about 35 people similar to me in various vacation type markets. And we're also expanding into urban type of markets too. So aside from just the mountains and people coming and wanting to have a second home or an Airbnb there, I do urban markets such as Charlotte, Greenville, and Columbia as well, which I find to be very profitable, very exciting in this particular space. So it's kind of how I got here, and it's pretty much all I do now. So I definitely got a niche, as you said, and a specialty, and the short-term rental space can be very profitable for folks.
Yeah, it certainly sounds it, and thank you, for sharing that. It's an incredible journey that you've had and gotten to where you are today. When it comes to this asset class itself, what do you think made investors, increasingly drawn to it? You said it's gotten, better over time. So, where do you see the trend in that?
Yeah, so I look at it as a four-pronged investment benefit, right? So the first part is I want to try to find you good cash flowing investments. And when I say good, it's usually going to be well north of a revenue generating thing above 10%. I'm really targeting 15 and love to get to 20. So what that means is on a $500,000 property, my goal at 15% is to get you a $75,000 annual revenue.
Mhm.
So that should cover all your mortgage expenses, and if you do some property management, it becomes a cash flow asset for you. Usually when you hit about 8%, depends on your rate you have, obviously, but 8 to 10%, you're now generating cash flow.
Yeah.
It obviously has a benefit if you use it for a vacation, if it's not being rented, saving money there. But the biggest thing, Michael, probably last year when I guess as part of the big beautiful bill was the Trump administration now allows for 100% bonus depreciation again on this asset class. There's a couple things, triggers you have to do that and take advantage of that. But really what that means is now you have a asset that you can write off on your taxes if you are materially participating. What that means is you have to serve about 100 hours a year annually toward that particular management of that class. And if you do the property management yourself, you're easily going to meet that standard. But what we can do now is do a cost segregation study on that home. Let's call it again a $500,000 home. Generally, about 20 to 25% of that investment is an amortization that was generally before either 3 to 5 to 7 years. So a door, a window in your home, anything that's really not structural can now, you can segregate those out. It's called $150,000 of that 500,000, and that immediately becomes 100% bonus depreciated if you materially participate. So $150,000, if you did it this year, goes against your taxes in 2026. So if you earn $200,000 a year, obviously you're paying $50,000, $60,000 of that in taxes. You can take $150,000 off of that. So really your income is $50,000. And guess what? You're going to get about 40 of that $50,000 back in your tax returns. So it became a very profitable present value of money situation. You can now claim all of those depreciation, future depreciation items today. And you can do this year after year after year after year after year. So if you have that and you have that big tax benefit, I can get you a 15% tax return, or I'm sorry, cash flow event. You have a asset that's appreciating in our markets, right? 7, 8% a year, and you're paying down your equity every single month you make a mortgage payment. It's four different prongs essentially that are very financially make it a great financial investment in this asset class.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, based on all that, especially like you said, with the new abilities that you have with the big, beautiful bill, it's very easy to see why the investors, are drawing more and more to this asset class. Makes perfect sense. I'm sure it's a great fit for, a lot of the folks that you deal with. And, shifting gears a bit, what would you say is the hardest part about consistently finding these hard performing properties?
Yeah, so it's not going to be every home is a great asset. You want to find things that are going to be unique to people who are going to come and stay in those places. If you're going, we'll just call it Greenville, for example, you're coming to visit. You're not going to go want to stay in a home that's going to give you the same things your home where you live is going to give. You want something when you go, you feel like you're on vacation. So finding a property that is close to, in Greenville, we have several state parks. Maybe it's right there. Maybe it's very close to downtown. Downtown Greenville is an amazing place to come stay. Maybe it's close to your youth baseball tournament. You're in town to with other parents for a tournament over 3 days. So, being close to those parks, being close to those swamp rabbit trails, museums, all those things that really draw guests is where we're going to try to find a property that makes sense. Then the second thing we're going to do is say, okay, well, now we found a property that could make sense. Let's look at comps nearby, and we can predict what those other properties are making a year. So to get to that 15%, I got to prove to you that this home can also do that. So if I find you 2 or 3 comps that are half a mile away, they're also 4 bedrooms, they also have a pool, and their average annual income is 125,000. We look at those pictures on Airbnb and say, is it obtainable to take this property and do the same thing? Yeah, I think it is. So you immediately have a property that you feel confident that can do a lot of income above that 15%. You know why it can, because it's close to X, Y, or Z. And all of a sudden you have a comfort level that says, okay, I may not even be from Greenville. I don't even know Greenville, but I have a confidence level that this asset can perform the way that we think it will. So that's what we do at Savvy Realties. We help folks find those properties that can generate that cash flow, but it takes a lot of due diligence. And what I do generally is I'll go find a property that I think is going to do well. I'll take a video and then I'll pitch it out to my investors that have a buy box in that category and say, hey, I got one property here, send it to 4 people. What do you think? So it's a very different approach than them sending me properties and me telling them how it's going to go. It's reverse. I go find the properties, I pitch it out to my investors, and they can take it a step further if they like.
Yeah, it's an excellent, very detailed process. And, getting back to that process itself, you mentioned, you're doing your due diligence. Is there any aspect of it where you feel like it could be scaled, improved, anything of that nature?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of, let's call it a first-time investor. That's going to be a different approach than somebody that's now done 1 or 2 in Greenville, where they've established a team per se, or they have a cleaner they're confident in, they have a handyman they're confident in, they know why it's doing well. They started their marketing for people from Greenville. Now all of a sudden they've done the hard work, the homework, the hard work, and are doing well. Well, now it's a little bit easier to get a second and a third and a fourth. You don't want to compete against your own homes, but at least you're going to be in the same region and same area where you can now scale, and it's going to cost you a lot less to do so, and your returns are going to be much greater. Any short-term rental or any Airbnb, as most people like to call them, it takes a little bit to get off the ground, right? You
Sure.
start your marketing, you have first-time guests. Hopefully, year two, you start getting repeat guests and repeat guests in year three, and that starts compounding into a higher occupancy rate, which obviously is going to create a higher revenue for that property.
Hmm. Absolutely, that makes sense. And now, with respect to AI, which, is an emerging topic in the real estate market, have you seen how that, has woven into your practice specifically, or, how others have applied it in helping, scale or improve their businesses?
Yeah, it's changed a lot for everybody, hasn't it?
Yeah.
It's a great thing. You really, I'm a big advocate of embracing change, and it really has done a tremendous thing for us. So I think the biggest value add is regulation, right? So I cover, as I mentioned, the mountains of North Carolina. I cover Charlotte, Asheville, Greenville, Columbia, South Carolina. And guess what? States are different, municipalities are different, counties are different, HOAs have different rules.
Hmm.
So AI helps me sort of build a model that helps me determine what can and what cannot be a short-term rental. And it's a very, you never want to buy an asset for $500,000, think you can go rent it and find out, get a knock on your door that, hey, this isn't permittable here. So it's the worst thing, it's the worst nightmare that can happen. So I spend a lot of time to make sure regulations are tied down, and I got to use a tool like AI because there's just so much. It's not the end all be all for that particular case, but if I say, hey, AI, I'm looking at Travelers Rest is a great little town outside of Greenville. It's very popular. It's in Greenville County. You got a municipality called Travelers Rest. I got to find, is it within a line in that city that allows short-term rentals, or maybe it's a permitting requirement, right? It's not just allowed or not allowed, but here's what you have to do to launch it. You got to get a permit. You got to get a business license. It costs $40. Got to do it every year. This is where you send it to. Here's the form. So it's a complex process to not only identify if they can, but also what is the process to make sure you're compliant. Taxes, another thing. I mean, you have to pay city taxes sometimes and state revenue taxes. So helping my clients really understand all of those dynamics around regulation as well as what those expenses will look like is going to help them really make a decision whether they want to buy or not buy. Because if you're in this little municipality and they're charging 5%, or over here you're not charging any, that becomes a different math equation all of a sudden. Where, hey, maybe we don't go look in Travelers Rest. Maybe we need to go look in Greer because of that dynamic. Just understanding that math and doing those pro formas is going to be really important. But AI is huge for me, and it really helps break down because a lot of these regulations are deep within government documents. They're deep within meetings. They're not just out there under a Google search. You have to go in and see some minutes and understand where they're at. Who are the city managers? You can follow up with a question around. I'll give you an example. AI thought that you could not rent in Travelers Rest, but when I dug deeper, I'm sorry, you could not do a short-term rental in Travelers Rest. But when I dug deeper, Michael, is I found that's only the case if a property has two, or a parcel has two properties on it.
Yep.
You can short-term rental one, but you can't do the other. You have to live there. So AI kind of took that language and thought it was wrong. So it's not always perfect, but it helped me at least understand that there is that unique thing now that I have to understand if it does have two parcels on it, an EDU or something like that, where you can't just go rent both of those. They want the owner there so they can kind of control the situation. A lot of folks you got to be within 15 miles of it, or you got to have a contact within 15 miles of it. So again, a lot of regulation, a lot of rules that we have to kind of follow, and we want to make sure our investors have the best resources to understand exactly what that looks like.
Of course, always want to make sure you're crossing your T's, dotting your I's. AI can certainly help in a tremendous way with that, so you kind of lean on it as a resource, for that, keeping you up to date on what you're allowed to do versus what you're not allowed to do, and to help keep your clients informed also. And sounds like for some, administrative tasks as well. Is that right?
Absolutely. We have in this real estate world, any real estate agents can tell you, you're balancing a lot of different transactions, a lot of different people, a lot of people with different buy boxes. So AI kind of helps me build that communication structure a little bit more and stay on top of things and understand the dynamics of my relationships and how best to handle those.
Mhm. Absolutely. And if you look at the business now, obviously, we've seen the trends going upward. A lot of folks are getting more and more attracted to this, as you mentioned earlier. Where do you think you would see it, in the next 6 to 12 months in a perfect world? Where would, you like to see your business? Where do you think it's going in general, I should say? And do you think AI will play, an even greater, role in it?
Yeah, no, it especially after the big beautiful bill, obviously that added a dynamic to it. But we're continuing to see post COVID, during COVID, a lot of this short-term rental business, so unprecedented revenue, unprecedented occupancy, how that all transpired. And when it was over, we had a lot of influx there, and people were like, well, what's going to happen in the future? We've seen now 4 consecutive years of strong returns, strong revenue. And I continue to see markets where people would prefer to stay in a home rather than a hotel. So urban markets are, like again, I mentioned Greenville because I live in Greenville. That's 10% of the travel go to Airbnbs instead of 90% of hotels. That number is coming up and hotels is coming down. I think people are getting more and more used to staying, having flexibility, enjoying the privacy, having a pool. That Airbnbs and VRBOs, they're not stopping. They're continuing to expand. And now that we're looking at urban markets that aren't the traditional vacation places like Greenville, Columbia, Charlotte, instead of Orlando and the Smokies and all those things where, that's just a travel destination. You have people coming in for new jobs in Greenville. You have international companies coming into Charlotte, Greenville, where they're going to stay for 2 weeks. They're not going to stay for 2 days. Even these business travelers would prefer, most of them prefer to be able to stretch out to bring their family in for the weekends and not just sit in a hotel. So I'm excited. The income, the financial benefits of these, but more people are doing them. They're taking advantage of them. And the competition is starting to get a little fierce. And you have to be a top 10 to 20% of your competition.
Yep.
Returns are going to be pretty marginal. You can't just buy something, turn the key, and expect to yield 10% anymore. You have to build something that's going to, what we call, stop the scroll. So, the idea is don't take photos from your phone. Don't have nothing to offer. Offer design, offer amenities, offer things that people are going to appreciate being on vacation or gone for 3 days, 7 days that they don't have at home, whether that's a hot tub, a fire pit, or just anything that they can really enjoy as a family or a group that they wouldn't be able to do in a hotel. So if you can get in the top 10 to 20% of your competition, the revenue is not straight line. It goes substantially vertically. And the players that can do that, and this is where we help, that can get in that top percentage, they make way more money than people that don't. So you got to understand your competition. When I mentioned earlier that example where I'm going to find you a property, I'm going to find you 2 or 3 comps around it. You got to study that. You got to see what you can do better than they're doing. And if you do, all of a sudden you're scrolling through Travelers Rest and those 4 properties come up. Guess what? You're going to stop the scroll because you've created a property that is unique that they say, wow, that would be cool to go stay at. Whether that's the beach, whether that's the mountains, whether that's an urban area, that's the key in this industry is getting in that top quartile, that top 10 to 15% is incredibly beneficial. Now it costs some markets that cost a lot to get there, where there's a lot of competition.
Yep.
Some markets like where I'm in these emerging urban markets, you look at a Traveler's Rest again. I keep bringing it up. 3 bedroom in Traveler's Rest. I looked the other day. There's 18 properties that meet that profile. Guess what? Not a single one had a hot tub. Only 2 had a fire pit.
Oh
So
boy.
you're talking. I got to spend $15,000, and I'm all sitting at the top. That's an amazing thing that you don't have to compete with in other big markets that are predominantly vacation related.
Yeah, that's incredible. It sounds like it's a really, exciting time to be in the industry in this particular niche, and the outlook, certainly looks very positive going forward based on, everything you just mentioned. So that's really great to hear. And then, as we're coming up on time here, I guess I would like to, end with any, words of wisdom for anyone, starting out in the industry or maybe thinking of doing something along the lines of what you do.
Yeah. First of all, from the investor standpoint, make sure you get a realtor that understands this niche. Make sure that they understand the regulations. Every realtor could probably say, "Yeah, I can do that. I can help you find a short-term rental." But it's the ones that do this. It's all they do are the ones that are going to add you the most value. And they're going to protect you with the regulations and all those things you got to look out for. So, from an investor standpoint, first of all, it's a great income producing, whether it be tax related or just income producing asset you should consider. Now, if you're a realtor and you wanted to get in this niche, you got to just study, got to learn it. There's so many tools out there. You have AirDNA, you have Rabu, you have STR Insights that help you figure out the income potential. And then there's like 10 to 20 major coaches within the country that you can pay money to, and they will help guide you end to end. Honestly, they do a lot of the same things I would do for free, but they exist. So if you feel more comfortable having that handheld in this process, they're out there. Tons of conferences and Facebook groups. Make sure you do your homework if you're going to get in this, whether you're an investor or a realtor, and just really understand. Again, I've been doing this now for 6 years, and I'm still learning. I'm still learning every day
Hmm.
with different things. But it's exciting. It's a different experience as a realtor than somebody moving to your area and you're going to go show a bunch of spec homes in a neighborhood. Here, I get to go look at cabins. I get to go look at these awesome properties that people are interested in and people are excited to go on vacation to. And I get ideas from those for my own as well. So it's fun. It's an enjoyable thing. It's a little stressful because now you're a financial analyst along with being a realtor because nobody wants to take $500,000 and lose money off of it. So um, that's a very different experience than just helping somebody find a place to live with their family.
Of course. And again, thank you for, sharing your knowledge on that. That's a really big help, not just to investors, but again, anybody who's thinking about, learning or being in this space more as a career going forward. I'm really sure, a lot of our viewers are going to find a ton of value in this conversation. Again, I really appreciate you coming on. But before we wrap up, where can people go to learn or connect with you more about you or your business, especially if they're local to your area?
Yeah, no, I appreciate you asking that. So go to www.savvy, SAVVY, .realty, and you'll see our team webpage, all the markets that we're in. You can check them out if you want to talk to some of my peers. You can do that. But if you go to www.savvy.realty/Mike is where I'll be. You can set up a call with me. My calendar's out there. Just set something up. You can see some of the case studies that I've done in different markets where I've seen success from purchases in 2025 and what they're doing now. So it just kind of gives you a lot of resources. We have a lot of our listings that are short-term rentals out there as well, and happy to help anybody that needs some advice or just wants to start this journey and hold their hand with. So
Excellent. So for anyone interested in short-term real estate investing, I highly recommend reaching out to Mike. He's a tremendous resource. You can learn a lot more from him. And Mike, I want to thank you again for joining us here on the Broker Room podcast today. That's all we've got. Appreciate it. Hope you take care.
Thanks, Michael. Take care. Bye.